This week I made some Witcher-inspired knuckle dusters out of foam. Here's how. Hex 3D made some great replicas from the show, so if you want those ones, grab them from there. Or you can simply make your own. I'm going to make kind of my own version of them. Obviously there's so many different formats for The Witcher. You've got the books, you've got the games, you've got the show, and you've got the lots of designs. So essentially it's wolves' heads on a knuckle. So I jump on Meshmixer, basically cut the head off a wolf and a knuckle duster that we got on Thingiverse, and we smash them together. But yeah, so 3D printed that, and then I went about figuring out how to mould it so that I can then make it in foam. So I've not made a mould before, but I think the best mould for this kind of shape is a 2-part mould. Did a dry fit with some foam board. So you make one half with clay, and then you sink the model into that, and then you pour the silicone on top. So I first started off by getting the clay, flattening it out on a piece of foam board. Then I just pressed the knuckle duster that I 3D printed into the clay, cut off the excess, and then I went around with one of the sculpting tools with the silicone tips and pushed the clay right up to the edge of the model. Use a bit of water, work your way around, take your time here, it's quite an important process. Then I fit the box for the mould, and then press the clay against that as well. Make sure everything's nice and level-ish. Now I'm making the registration marks. Just wet the tool so it doesn't stick to the clay so easily. Hot glue around the edge of the mould. Got hot glue everywhere in the process. Done. Then I measured the height, width and depth to work out the area that I'd need. There's a great video online actually that tells you how to do this. You've also got to work out the amount that silicone kind of takes up. Anyway, maths. So I'm using Polycraft silicone rubber, GP3481, which is from a company called MB Fiberglass here in the UK, and it's 10:1 ratios of base to catalyst. I'm just using a lollipop stick here to give it a good mix. Then I'm putting it in a vacuum tank to extract the air that I've added to it by doing the mixing. This isn't essential when you're making things with foam, but it's good practice to do with your moulds. Anyway, it eventually collapses and then it's ready to go. Don't pour like this. Try and pour it in a nice thin stream away from the model. So to double on removing the air bubbles, I used one of these massage things and vibrated it. And it actually worked quite well. You can see a couple of the bubbles popping. Get the mold out carefully, because I thought I might need to reuse this, but I mean, it turns out I don't. Anyway, then you can remove the clay that you've pressed carefully into it. I forgot to use clear coat on the clay. You're supposed to use clear coat between the clay and the silicone, which helps removing it from it. It's not too bad because I'm using water-based clay, so I'm just giving it a rinse under the tap, and as you see, it comes out fine. It also means I can reuse the clay because it's not being contaminated with clear coat. But yeah, in future I probably will use clear coat. Anyway, then I did a little bit of a cleanup on the mold because it's good practice, and also I'm going to be using this half to make the impression for the other half. Press the prop back into the mold carefully. Anyway, there it is, it's in and it's ready for the second part of the mold. You put it back in a container or a box that you can make. You can make this out of wood. I'm using foam board again because it was pretty reliable before. Instead of hot glue this time, I've just taped around the whole thing so it's not going to leak. Then I used the silicone release spray, which you think would help the silicone release from silicone, but it doesn't because it's a silicone-based spray. So don't use this, use something else. It needs to be petroleum-based. Anyway, I used it, and you'll find out what happens. I think it's probably more for when you're releasing something from the mold. Silicone release, I don't know. Anyway, so overnight, that one's set again, and I cut away the container to reveal my 2-part mold. Oh, this is very satisfying.
Nice.
So I revealed the 2-part mold, and I think fantastic. Then there's no edge. So yeah, as I said earlier, the silicone-based mold release that I used is not what you want to use. You don't want to use anything that's got silicone in it. So I've ended up with a solid lump of silicone with my prop inside. So I tried to recover this. Got to cut it very carefully, and I ended up with a drop mold anyway. So there's obviously 4 holes in it that go all the way through. I've just had to cut them to get this to get the prop out. And I thought, well, I've done it now. I've used the silicone. I may as well have a go. When I was doing it, I kind of panicked. I should have cut a zigzag down the side. So I make a spout hole. Yeah, a really rough one. I kind of not given up at this stage, but I just thought it's a failure.
There is no such thing as failure.
So we may as well see how far we can go. So I'm using soft foam for this time round. It's Polycraft Soft 100 foam, again from MB Fiberglass. Give the catalyst a good shake and put them in separate containers because you only have a 30-second period to mix it thoroughly and get it into the mold and then close the mold or whatever. Anyway, it sets in the cup before I can get it in the mold. I've got a tiny bit in the mold, but that doesn't count. So we have to rethink things a bit. Their solution is to use some paint squeegee bottles. I cut a second hole into the mold, as you can probably see, just above one of the wolf heads. So the idea is now that I'm going to squirt the soft foam into that hole and we'll have a beautiful foam mold. You can probably guess what's going to happen when I put something that expands 9 times into a sealed container. That's right, it explodes. Luckily it exploded in the bin. So it kind of almost worked, kind of. I then moved on to my denser foam, the Polycraft 022 medium foam. This has a much longer pot life. It's about 2 minutes rather than 30 seconds. So it gives me a bit more time to mix it and get it into the mold before it explodes. I get it in both holes. By covering the hole with your fingers, you apply a bit of pressure, back pressure when it expands. This is what we ended up with, which wasn't bad. You can see where the two points came in. So there's one on the base there, and then there's one on the underside of one of the wolf heads. But yeah, pretty good foam. So this is the process I've settled on. I use these bottles to inject the foam into the mold. This isn't very ecologically friendly. I need to figure out a better technique for getting the foam in, but just to demonstrate. So what I do is I mix the foam straight into the bottle by weight. Then I get the lid on and I give it a good shake. And then with the wider end now, it kind of just goes straight into the mold. You can see I've wrapped it in wood to keep the mold shape, and I squirt it straight into the hole that I've made in the wood, going straight into the mold. Then I cover that hole with tape, so there's only one point of exit for the foam. So hopefully it's going to fill the mold and expand out this hole, and it does. Give a bit of back pressure to begin with, just so it fills all those voids. And then I put it on the radiator. These are self-skinning foam, and it reacts better to being slightly warm. Let's have a look. So we cut away at the tape, cut away at the foam where the foam meets the wood, and we cut the spout out. And the big reveal. And considering that this mold was a failure,
failure is just life trying to move us in another direction.
I'm pretty happy with how things are coming out. They're pretty good density. There's a pretty good skin on them. You can see where the bits just need to be trimmed. And yeah, I'm really happy with the amount of detail that came out. But yeah, anyway, I made a few like this, and then I cleaned them up with the clippers, because that's probably the easiest way to get a nice cut edge. Then I give them a little Dremel. Actually, I'm surprised that this foam dremeled without any issues. I probably wouldn't go crazy on it, but it gives me a nice finish. I'm trying to get rid of some of those mold lines. Then I'm going to cover them in latex, which is a nice flexible coat, which will give them a bit of strength and durability. I started painting the latex on, and then I realized that I could probably just dunk them straight into the latex. So I did. So you want to dunk them in, let them drip, hang them somewhere where you're also protecting where they're dripping. Where the latex is pooling, you want to dab it with a brush or a paper towel just to stop it from drying with a big globule of latex. Worked surprisingly well. So I did a couple of coats like that on some. I then thought I'd try out something that I have been meaning to try for a little while, and that's my spray gun. It's just a simple, normal spray gun that you can just get from your local hardware shop. It's all self-contained and electric. And surprisingly, the latex that I'm using works really well in it. It doesn't clog it. It's the perfect consistency to be used in the spray gun. You obviously want to make sure that you're not going too close when you're spraying. But yeah, I'm surprised it worked so well. Anyway, I did a few coats like this. Some ended up with about 5 or 6 coats, and others with 2 or 3. I just wanted to see how the detail survived the latex process. With something like a sword, you're probably going to need to make sure that it's really coated in latex. These are not going to be used in fighting or combat of any kind. I don't think punching, even if you've got foam knuckles on, is a good idea. So the idea is that you probably don't need as many layers of latex to keep these protected. It's more about just getting that foam sealed and getting a finish on it. So you can probably get away with much less latex to keep some of that detail. Then I gave them a black coat with the Polyprop Seal Prime, which is a bit flexible, which is good. Then I used Flexi Paint on some of the Knuckle Dusters. I've got gold and I've got gunmetal, and I've also got a silver Flexi Paint. Flexi Paint is good. You need to build up some layers sometimes with these metallic colours. I am just laying it on without watering it down, which is going to be a bit thick and it's not going to give you a really smooth finish, but that's what I'm going for here. If you want a really smooth finish, you have to do lots of thin layers. Oh, then I used some of the Flexi Paint in the spray gun. I had to water it down quite a lot, and it still kind of blocked it up a bit. Then a couple of them I wanted to do gold, just to see how it took. Obviously I know that the Witcher wouldn't have gold ones, because gold's soft, right? Then I used a black wash to get a bit of weathering on the knuckles. I understand that the ones in the program are very shiny. But this design, they're a bit more dirty, a bit more kind of used and worn, and not necessarily silver. It's just more of a vibe. You can paint them however you like, obviously, and you can do anything you want. This is just showing you that you can kind of make more or less anything into foam fairly easily. Really simple process here. Slopped it on, dabbed off where it's pooling, and then let it dry. Yeah, and then yeah, that's basically it for them. I'm really happy with how they turned out. As you can see, there's a couple of different styles. This one's a bit more silver. There's a couple gunmetal ones. I painted them really basically here. I'll probably do another video where I do them a bit more detailed. The point of the video was just to demonstrate how simple it can be to make more or less anything in foam. These are quite detailed models, 3D printed models. You can cast almost anything in the silicone. Cool. If you like the video, please like and subscribe to my channel. I'm going to be making more props and doing all sorts of hobby related stuff. And yeah, check out my other videos, and there should be more to come soon. Cheers. Bye.